Ladies and gents, my name is Matt Locke, and you're listening to, and perhaps watching, the Unleashing Potential podcast. It's in these episodes that I chat with a range of progressive individuals who are unleashing their potential on the world around them at work and in life. With that said, I'm glad you're here, so you can join me as we take a deep dive with today's guest. You too, welcome to the podcast. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on. I know we've taken a little bit of time to get there, the time differences and all of the different bits and pieces that have been going on at this end in particular with the various wet weather events, but it's a pleasure to have you here. And what I'd love for you to do is introduce yourself, just who you are, where you are, and what it is you do in the world.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for having me on the show. My name is Hitu Jagesar. I'm the president of the Art of Living Foundation in Canada. I'm also an instructor with the foundation, so have been teaching the various workshops that we deliver, breath work, meditation, yoga workshops for the last 20 odd years, not just in Canada, but I've taught in various parts of the world as well. And right now I'm based on Vancouver Island, so it's still Tuesday here for me, Tuesday afternoon.
Sure thing. Vancouver Island. I haven't been quite that far. I've been very close. I've been to a place called Squamish, you would know, of course, which is just up back on the mainland. But I have a friend of mine is now living on the island. And he certainly describes it as basically perfection. Now, you mentioned the Art of Living Foundation. Just maybe, tell me a bit more about that. What that is, what it does. It sounds like it's an international organization. I'd love to hear more about that.
It is. It's an international organization with the vision of creating stress-free, violence-free communities and societies. And we are based in over 156 countries. Today, we've been in service for over 40 years. We're a humanitarian and educational organization, and it's run globally. It's volunteer-based. So our instructors are all volunteers. Our service projects are run by volunteers. So we do various things from anywhere from personal development to sustainable development through various environmental projects, social development projects. It's a huge organization. But for Canada right now, our focus is on providing tools and techniques to individuals and communities to handle stress, to handle trauma, to handle negative emotions, and then to live a healthier, more balanced lifestyle in a nutshell.
Well, certainly right up our street, that's for sure. And I guess just to give some context around the timing of this, because obviously the podcasts live forever, we're just rolling out of the back end of the C-19 pandemic. And so I imagine that's been a busy time for a foundation such as yours when we think about for example, mental health. I know that that's a major topic globally, of course, but also for your foundation, it's a key area of focus, given anxiety, depression, you mentioned already domestic violence, all of those. Unfortunately, the data has moved in the wrong direction very much on the back of the pandemic. How's the organization adapted to that and tried to help combat those struggles?
Yeah, definitely our work has increased. I mean, this is what we do. This is what we're here for. We had to at the start of the pandemic, very quickly, like everybody else, switch to online teaching. So our programs, the vast majority are available online even now, and we will continue down this road. And people are reaching out, and one of the reasons why I'm here with you today, Matt, is just to raise awareness as to what we do and that the fact that we are here and our approach is very effective, simple to do, and bears results very quickly. Using very simple breathing techniques, meditation, a little bit of yoga, a little bit of self-awareness, we can shift from our inner world. We can have more control over our inner world when the outside world is unraveling around us in a way that we're not used to, in a way that we're not comfortable with. So having more control with what's going on inside in the mind, at the level of the emotions, and having self-mastery over that is where we need to be heading. So these techniques that we teach, they're evidence-based. There's a lot of science backing them, the data around the breath work and the meditation that we teach. And today it's very accessible. It's accessible to everybody. Anybody can do these techniques. So that's where we are. Yeah.
Yeah, incredibly powerful. I mean, as part of our sort of online program, Level Up, and certainly we introduce some basic breath work, mindfulness. We do a couple of guided meditation sessions and so on. And for many people, it's often their first time. It's an introduction to those kind of tools. And most people are blown away by how effective they are, the impact that they can have. But by the time they're with us, of course, there's almost like a filter process getting through to being on the program, and therefore they tend to be more open and receptive, and they're in an environment where they're ready to learn. I'd be really fascinated to know how you try and access and enter the world of those who need help, but are not necessarily open yet to the idea of mindfulness and breath work and so on. I mean, how do you reach out? It's like cold calling, I guess.
A lot of this happens through word of mouth. In our case, this is what's been the most effective over the 40 odd years that we've been in existence, because these techniques are so powerful, so beneficial, so transformative, that people share it with, whenever they've benefited from it, they will tell people around them, their friends and family, to reach out to us. So the majority of our courses happen through word of mouth, and then of course some marketing is required as well, as it is today in the digital world. But mainly people will come because they know somebody who has benefited from it and they want to experience it. And also those who undergo the courses, they undergo the transformation, their presence itself speaks for it. You can see from the day one when they entered the program to the last day when they leave the program, they're smiling, they're much lighter, they're much brighter, and something has shifted at a very, very deep level. So that shows up in the way they conduct themselves, in their relationships with other people, also in their professional environment. And people notice that, oh, something is different, and I want that. What's working for you here? And that's how people come.
Absolutely. Sometimes I find when I'm talking to people and they ask what we do and how we do it, when I get to the part about mindfulness, and I talk about breath work and meditation, some people, you can see their eyes glaze over. You lose them at that point. And if you use the word, I find the same if you use the word with the term spirituality. And I know that for some people that still has religious undertones to it. And if they're not religious, if they don't have a religious belief, then it's already starting to be a barrier to them. I think every cloud has a silver lining, and certainly this pandemic that we're on the back of now, one of the silver linings, I believe, is a lot more, certainly awareness around the subjects of suicide prevention and mental health, much greater awareness around that, which is fantastic. As well, the stigma around mindfulness and meditation and breath work, I believe, has been reduced, generally speaking. Just my own observations, I guess I'm talking about. But the term spirituality and how that fits in today's world, I'd love to hear what you think. What does spirituality mean to you in today's world?
anything that uplifts your spirit. See, you're not just matter. There's consciousness in you, right? You're not just this physical body. There's an energy in you. There's the consciousness that allows you to move and tick and do whatever, everything that you do. So the energy behind you, inside of you, that the way in which you can harness that, you can uplift that, you can increase that energy level so that you are happier, you are more living more with the human values. When I talk about human values, I talk about love and compassion and friendliness. We all know this. This is what being spiritual is. So to be more in touch with that natural state that we were born with, of being loving, compassionate, caring, more in harmony with people around us, with the environment around us. That is what spirituality is, all simply. You don't have to, be religious. You don't have to have certain sets of beliefs. Just recognizing that there is much more to you than just this body, much more to you than your mind, much more to you than your emotions, that you're pure, scintillating joy, energy, love, spirit, and accessing that and having the means to live fully to your potential, being happy. That is spirituality, right? And caring for others as well. Living in a world where you're only consumed with your own needs and desires, that is not a spiritual life. But when you start to care for others, when you start to feel connected with yourself and with others around you, that is living spiritually. That's it. It's our natural state of being. And if you want to go a little bit further, the founder of Art of Living, Sri Ravi Shankar, he says religion is like the banana skin, and spirituality is the banana. Right? Very often we hold on to the skin and throw away the banana, but the essence is there in your hand. This is what you're made up of. So holding on to the human values. Yeah.
I've not heard that way before. It's a nice way of describing it, I think. Just sort of condensing it down. So, I mean, when we think about being in touch with ourselves and so on, and that it all sounded wonderful, but I don't have time because I'm too busy. I'm working. I've got a million emails. I've got to take the kids to soccer. I've got to try and find time to train and be fit myself and cook. And I don't have time for any of that, is often what we hear.
So busier you are. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. I mean, and that's right. I mean, it's a busy world, right? And people, generally speaking, are pretty wrapped up in sort of the whirlwind of life, or on the hamster wheel, as we like to refer to it. It's often when our delegates start Level Up, it's a little bit like that for them. And slowly over the 5 weeks, we start to change some of the behaviors around technology, for example. We start to change some of the behaviors around slowing down, disconnecting, being more in touch with themselves. And by default, as you said, I mean, by default, actually, that leads to them being more in touch and better connected with those around them. It can't not work, actually, if someone's willing to lean in and practice some of these wonderful, let's call them activities. Breathwork in particular, and we tend to start with, and we introduce a very simple box breathing, just as the starting point in the first week of our program. And even though we introduce a different style and then we have guided meditation across the different weeks, it tends to be the box breathing that people stick with. And of course, from our perspective, we don't have an opinion about which they should do. I mean, they should do the one that makes them feel the best, that it resonates with them the most, because they're more likely to continue doing it, which is, of course, what we try and instill, sort of make these daily or weekly habits, life behaviors. But let's sort of dig in. I mean, obviously you are a yoga instructor, a yoga expert, as you are with breathwork and meditation. I'd love maybe if you just talk about a little bit about the history of, the ancient wisdom that backs all of this. It's not some new fandangled creation. On the contrary, it
Yeah.
dates back a long time. And if you're happy, I'd love to hear your take on the history of it and how that's now so relevant in today's world more than ever, it could be argued.
Yeah, I'll take it a step back a little bit just to
Mm,
touch upon what you were saying earlier about, people not finding the time. But the busier we are, more is the need for us to find the energy to continue doing what we want to do. Stress, burnout is when there's too much to do, not enough time and not enough energy to do whatever we want to accomplish. There's not much we can do about, everybody just has 24 hours in a day. No one has a minute more than that. So not much you can do about acquiring more time. Not much you can do very often about diminishing your workload. But what you do have control is your own energy level. And this is where the work we do is important, because once you are able to raise your energy level, then you're able to accomplish everything that you want to accomplish in a better manner, in less time even. Now, coming back to the breath, this in the system of yoga, in the science of yoga, we have known that there is a correlation between how you breathe and your state of mind. For every emotion that we experience, there is a corresponding rhythm in the breath. So this is now acknowledged by modern science. It is now known that yes, in fact, this is the case. When you're angry, your breathing pattern changes. When you're sad, depressed, there's a change in the rhythm again. When you're happy, you breathe differently. When there's anxiety, your breath changes again. So this was known in the system of yoga for millennia, right? Now, and that's where all the teachings of yoga, the pranayams, meditations, all that came from there. So how do you harness your mind? It's not easily done just by willing it. You cannot just, if you're angry, you're caught up in that storm, in that moment. Then how do you overcome those emotions? How do you dissolve your negative emotions? By attending to the breath. Because by breathing in certain ways, those emotions dissolve and your mind comes back into the present moment. So understanding the workings of the mind. See, if you notice just in the last few minutes that we've been chatting together, though you're here, the mind does tend to drift for a second, for a fraction of a second, thinks about what it needs to do, or it is thinking about something that happened 5 minutes ago. It's vacillating between the past and the future. This is the natural tendency of the mind. More stress there is in the nervous system, more this tendency is there, and the stress accumulates, right? When you're angry, you're stuck somewhere. You're stuck in the past.
mm,
You're stuck in something that you wanted that didn't happen, or something that happened that you didn't like. Mind is stuck. Even when you're anxious, the event hasn't happened, but you're stuck somewhere in the future. So you're not able to live fully in the present moment as life is right now. But your breath is in the present moment. It is only in the present, happening in the present moment. So by using your breath, you can harness the mind. The analogy I would give here is of a kite. A kite is moving here and there in the wind, right? But how do you control that kite is you need that string. And that is what the breath is doing. You're using your breath to arrest this tendency in the mind to vacillate and to bring it here and now in the moment where life is happening. And you can deal with situations and events in a much more effective way and be more joyful, more happy, in a pleasant state of mind in the moment, and dissolve those negative tendencies. So this is where all these breathing techniques, pranayams, all these things come into effect. And in Art of Living, we have our signature breathing breath work. It's called the sky breathing technique. Sky being the acronym for Sudarshan Kriya Yoga, Sudarshan Kriya. So here we are using the natural rhythms of the breath to harmonize the whole nervous system, to harmonize all the levels of our being and eliminate stresses that are very deep rooted at the cellular level. So it's very powerful, but at the same time, very easy to do and very accessible. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. I mean, and certainly for the foundation, when you're working through the programs, I mean, is it a blend of breath work, meditation, and yoga? I mean, what are the component pieces that you have packaged together that ultimately derive the best results?
So I mean, first of all, yoga is very misunderstood by the general population. People think yoga is just doing the postures or doing the asanas, when in fact, yoga is a whole complete science of life. It's a spiritual elevation, integration of all your emotions, and connection with oneself, right? So it is not just some postures that we do. It includes meditation, it includes pranayams, breathing, and it includes knowledge of the self, right? So if we look at all of that, our programs are very packaged in a way that bring all these elements together: the knowledge, the service component, the techniques, and the practice of it, for the individual. All these elements are there in our workshops.
And has that been harder to deliver online? I mean, I know with yoga there are postures involved as part of the overall delivery of yoga, and therefore doing that online, has that been?
No. We've managed to adapt and catch up very quickly. Now people are having amazing experiences online, actually, because they're in the comfort of their homes, and
Yeah, sure.
they have created that space around them where they can go inward and experience their depth. Yeah. So
and with the foundation, I mean, I assume you're trying to instill new lifestyle behaviors that people then, it becomes part of their routine. It's not just a program for 5 weeks or whatever it is, and then done. Because I mean, naturally, we know, and that's why we have the community on the back end of our 5-week program. And the 5-week program is just the entry point, because we know that there's value in the ongoing being part of a community, of course, maintaining that human connection, but as well, just helping to maintain those new routines until they really are second nature and almost muscle memory. How do you handle that?
So yes, we do need, I mean, when you mean lifestyle changes, no, we're not going to come and tell you what to eat and what time to, no, but we do continue the practices with you. So you have a support system by which the instructor you'll come together, on a weekly basis with other people who have learned the techniques, so that you can, many times it's harder to get into a routine on your own. The discipline is not there, but when you're there with the group, it makes it much easier, much more fun. So we offer follow-up sessions for that reason. And then once you've done the workshop, we are here to support, to be with you for the rest of your life. We're here. It's up to you to reach out. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And I mean, what kind of numbers are we talking about here? Roughly, round numbers globally. What kind of numbers are we talking about? You said
globally, we've reached several 100 million. I mean, it's hard to even quantify that.
Yeah, wow. Okay,
because
so significant. Significant.
Yeah.
Talk about making an impact. And I know that when we talked before, part of your approach is helping people understand there's a bigger picture. And you mentioned earlier in today's chat often people are just within themselves. They're operating in my words would be, they're operating in their bubble. They're kind of just living their life in their bubble, unconsciously, often, in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it. And part of what you offer is the opportunity of being part of something bigger and trusting that there is something bigger out there to be a part of that is good. And it sounds like the foundation ultimately is that. And by being a part of the foundation, you're being exposed to this idea, of being something bigger than themselves, and understanding, just changing, helping to reframe the perspective.
It's not just the foundation. Foundation is one organization. Recognizing that you yourself are something much bigger, right? That you're not just this physical form, that there's a spirit in you, that if you can tap into the power in there, that you can recognize that you have huge potential, that you are connected to something much bigger in the universe. That's what we mean, right? You're not just an individual, but you're part of of a whole, and recognizing that there's this universal consciousness that is guiding, that is supporting, that is sustaining us, right? And that awareness comes when your mind starts to shed the stresses, when there's less noise, less chatter in your mind. Then more stillness there is in you, more composure, more centeredness there is in you. You recognize that you're part of a whole, that you're not just this one individual.
And how is that important? How does that matter?
This is the basis of life. Somebody who recognizes that they are connected to nature will not pollute nature, will not cause damage and destruction to nature. Somebody who recognizes that they're part of somebody else, that they're connected to XYZ person, they will not be violent or abusive or hurtful towards that, because they recognize that same spirit that is in that individual is here in me right now. I cannot hurt the other. It's you and me are the same. We are one. And that requires greater awareness. When we are stressed, earlier I talked about human values. Those human values don't express. We are born with human values. If you look at small children, they're happy, loving, caring, friendly by nature. But what has happened to us as adults, we start to accumulate impressions in the mind, accumulate stresses, and that natural tendency to be caring and compassionate becomes much more restricted, or it will express itself only occasionally. When the mind is stressed, you're not loving towards somebody else. You're not caring towards somebody else. You're so consumed with yourself, your own comfort, your own needs, your own desires, your own wants. Right? The moment we start to shed all of that, we recognize that we're part of, that's what I'm saying, we're part of everything, part of the whole. There's only one consciousness, and we're all, existing in that energy, the same spirit that is in me is in you as well. And that matters. If every child was to grow up with that sort of awareness, imagine how peaceful this world would be. No violence, wars happen because we've created divisions in our own minds, judgments, prejudices. Absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, too true. In the same way that we often refer to within our community about the lost art of play as adults. I mean, you see, kids can find joy in a puddle of rainwater, can find just pure joy in that. Or actually, one of the questions we ask is, when was the last time you climbed a tree just for the sake of climbing a tree? And 100% of the answers are, when I was a kid. It's like, we loved it when we were kids. When did that change? What stopped? It's still fun to climb a tree. Surely it's fun to climb a tree. and so on. All of that creativity, that enthusiasm that somehow gets modified and suppressed as we become adults, responsible, and all of those things, and follow the societal norms of, we get a job, we meet someone, maybe we have a family, and so on and so on and so on. The very traditional path, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it seems to come with some inherent downsides, like that, the lost art of play and creativity and fun. And as you say, we often, as adults, we become cynical, prejudiced, we all sorts of things. Interesting how that occurs. But I appreciate what you're talking about in terms of spirituality and being connected at a more fundamental level. And once we have that realization, the power that comes with that, to be more free in our thoughts and our feelings and our emotions, and more connected. To the naysayers, to those who just go, it's all woo-woo, how do you try and address that with the people who are just closed to the idea of that?
Just look at children. Children are spiritual by nature. They are happy. They live simple lives. They're free. Even if they're upset, they will be able to shake it off in a moment, right? And come back into the present moment. Being spiritual means living in the present moment over and over, again and again and again and again, like children, right? That's it. Nothing complicated about that. So remembering that you're that. It's not woo-woo. It's your nature. You were born like that. But somewhere along the way, other things took over. So yeah, just reconnecting with that.
I'm conscious that and I suspect anyone listening to this in our audience, so far would have been relating to, the Western world struggles and challenges, and those challenges and struggles in our lives, and so on, and thinking about just the busyness of it all. Now, I know you've spent quite some time in Africa, and I'd really like to hear about what your mission there was, and maybe still is, but as well, how relatable. I mean, they've got a different set of struggles maybe, but somehow they're relatable in terms of the emotions and the psychology of it all. And actually, even though they're very different situation, but somehow the same kind of struggles. I'd love to hear more about that.
No, you pinned it. It's exactly that. I have taught in many African countries, and I've spent a lot of time in conflict areas as well. And the stories are different. The situations are very different. Challenges are very different. But then the human nature is the same wherever you are. Every soul is seeking that experience of peace, of joy, of comfort from within, of solace, and that's what we're here to guide you towards, using some simple techniques. So people are the same, and they experience the same benefits, they experience the same transformation, because ultimately none of us have ever learned how to handle our mind, our emotions, neither at school nor at home. Have we been taught what happens when you're angry? What do you do when you're angry? How do you overcome your negative emotions? What do you do when you're feeling down and depressed?
We medicate. In the Western world, we medicate. We give it a label and we medicate. That's pretty much how it works in the Western world, which is a shame, huh?
Yeah. So, but it's a simple balance of increasing your energy level. When I talk about energy, I talk about life force energy. So when that balance shifts and your energy level rises, then automatically you feel better. You feel happier, you feel more alert, mind is more clear. So these techniques take you in that direction, and they also make you resilient to stresses, resilient to anxiety, negative emotions, so that though your circumstances are challenging, from inside you're in control. You know what you need to do. And even though you do get upset, you will get angry emotions will come and go. This is life. We are human beings. Then you just sit with yourself for 15, 20 minutes, do the breathe, do the techniques, and overcome them and get on with your life. Right? You don't let those things take over your life. You be in charge. This is what we call self-mastery. So people anywhere in the world, they experience this. Everywhere in the world, they experience the same because we're the same. We are the same. We want the same thing.
Absolutely. I know when we spoke before, one of the challenges in Africa that is an ongoing reality for the women there in particular is that I think you said it was only 1/3 of men are remaining in some parts of Africa, and of course that leads to some significant challenges for the women that remain. And I'm interested. Your way of helping them is the same, I'm assuming, because as you've just said, we're all humans. We're the same in the end.
Yeah, those were specific situations in war-torn countries that you are referring to, and we're seeing the same happening right now with Ukraine, right? Where the men are at war and the women and children are the ones who are really struggling to survive, and to overcome the challenges, the day-to-day. So it's the same. We're the same everywhere. Doesn't matter where. Today the war is here. Tomorrow it can be somewhere else. But the same tools are delivered in slightly packaged, slightly differently. We have specialized programs for PTSD. So there are certain techniques that are taught that can help with that, and the sky breathing being one of them. But incorporated in there are some other techniques also to help the individual. So those were taught. I taught those programs. Here we teach them to first responders and to the military in the Western world. So yeah, challenges are there globally.
And are there differences when you consider the different cultures? And here in this conversation, we've crossed a fairly broad range of cultures. How do you find you have to adapt the programs or your approach of the subject, the introduction of the subject, based on cultural sensitivities?
Yeah, I mean, you need to be skilled at it, but ultimately there's not much to adapt because everybody wants to be happy and everyone is breathing. So you just need to, we don't overcomplicate things. We just teach them what they know already, but bring it into their context. Depending, for children we have very different programs, so the same techniques taught but delivered in a different manner, because children are not going to sit and listen to you for a couple of hours. You need to play games, you need to read stories, you need to deliver it in a different manner. For the military, for personnel from the police, people who have been affected with PTSD, delivered slightly differently. And the corporate sector, you have to talk a different language, right? Same material, same techniques, but delivered using language that they're familiar with, that they make sense to them. So that's what we adapt our programs in that manner. Yeah.
It's actually a good example when you think about what we've discussed. How perhaps there should be the single way of introducing it, and it's the same way that the children received, that makes it more fun, gamifies it. Isn't it? It's interesting, isn't it? Given what we've said, how it's adapted to a certain type of language for a corporate customer. And I mean, PTSD is something different, of course, but how it's delivered to adults, and even adults within a certain segment or industry, versus how it's delivered to children. You have to wonder if the take-up rate would be even better if it was a more approachable, even more approachable style, like kids enjoy. You have to wonder, don't you, why we adults need something packaged differently, when in fact maybe the gamification is the key there. Who knows? But
adults complicate things a lot. whereas children, they take things as, they receive things as it comes to them. Adults, the intellect has matured there, right? So you have to
Sure.
work with that. You have to present
They don't
things
have the
in a different
cynicism
manner.
yet. I
Children,
guess, I guess that adults tend to be more, maybe more cautious. They have learned to be more cautious. They feel they need to be more cautious and find logic and reason in it, and almost stress test it mentally before being open to it in case it's a danger or something that isn't for them. You're right, though. I mean, children, sure, just open, huh? Just much more open, and which is why it's a shame it's not part of the schools, a sort of basic education. I mean, there are other examples how kids go through school and are not really taught, in the most part, in my experience, are not taught anything about how to handle their personal finances, for example.
So we are teaching in schools. So our programs are taught in schools as well.
Oh,
yeah.
That is music to the ears.
For this reason.
Yeah,
Colleges
I mean,
and
absolutely.
schools, yeah.
You have to wonder as well how many. I mean, given the dramatic increase in statistics of children who are being diagnosed with ADHD and similar type behavioral conditions, as they're referred to now, you have to wonder how many of those could be dramatically improved or even, prevented, heaven forbid, just by adopting some of these practices. I know when I said lifestyle earlier, you sort of meant, we don't tell people what to eat. I mean, food is just one component of lifestyle. I mean, lifestyle can be as individual as behaviors around technology, sleep, for sure. As well, we would include sort of active recovery protocols, so breath work, meditation, yoga, tai chi, ice baths, ice showers, saunas, you name it. We're talking about trying to build bulletproof brains and bomb-proof bodies, and ultimately deliver happy, healthy humans is what we're trying to do, as you are. So in the same way, we don't tell people what to eat, of course not. And we're not qualified to do that, and it's not our motivation. Most people know what's good for them or not anyway. So we just try and create the space for them to make better decisions for themselves. But we do that through a lot of the techniques that you're talking about, variations of, big picture, the umbrella, mindfulness, breath work, meditation. But no, powerful stuff. Look, I'm really conscious of time, Hitu. I'm very grateful and how generous you've been with your time. If you were to try and sum up any sort of final message that you'd like to give to our audience, how would that sound?
I would say, give yourself a chance. There is much more to you than you even know. And to tap into that, to tap into the source of what you are, it requires some skill and it requires some guidance. And once you've tasted that nectar, then you know that you will not regret it. You will, in fact, you will say, oh, I should have known about this, a long time ago. Why didn't I experience this much earlier? This has been my personal experience as well. So I would say reach out to us, and if people want to connect with me personally, my Instagram handle is Coach Hitu. And
we'll put all of that in. We'll put all of that in the show notes for sure. Yeah, absolutely. But no, it seems the more we can do at a young age, a school level now, the better. We're laying the foundations for future generations, no question about it. Well, thank you, and there you have it. So thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this, please go ahead and share it and leave us a review on whichever platform you're using. It really does help more than you know. And if you're interested in grabbing a copy of my book, Lead by Example, which talks about how you can unleash your potential at work and in life, I would love to send it to you. So if you go to theimpactproject.io and take a dive down that rabbit hole, it'll end up on your doorstep in no time. My thanks to Hitu again. We'll be posting all of the various links to Hitu's socials, website, for sure, the Art of Living Foundation, of course, and they'll all be in the show notes. So until next time, get gritty about kicking your goals and go make and impact in the world.